Oh, I marched to the Battle of New Orleans at the end of the early British wars. The young land started growing, the young blood started flowing, but I ain't a-marching anymore. For I killed my share of Injuns in 1,000 different fights. I was there at the Little Big Horn. I heard many men lying, I saw many more a-dying, but I ain't a-marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with a saber and a gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I stole California from the Mexican land, fought in the bloody Civil War. Yes, I even killed my brothers and so many others, but I ain't a-marching anymore. For I marched to the battles of the German trench in a war that was bound to end all wars. Oh, I must have killed 1 million men and now they want me back again, but I ain't a-marching anymore. It's always the old to lead us to the wars, always the young to fall. Now look at all we've won with a saber and a gun. Tell me, is it worth it all? For I flew the final mission in the Japanese skies, set off the mighty mushroom roar. When I saw the cities burning, I knew that I was learning that I ain't a-marching anymore. Now the labor leaders screaming when they close a missile plant. United Fruit screams at the Cuban shore. Call it peace or call it treason, call it love or call it reason, but I ain't a-marching anymore. No, I ain't a-marching anymore.
I don't want to, you know what, let me move it over. I don't want it in front of the podium.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the Spiders from Mars. He played it left hand, but made it too far. Became the special man, then we were Ziggy's band. Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo, like some cat from Japan. He could lick 'em by smiling, he could leave 'em to hang. They came on so loaded, man, well hung in snow white tan. So where were the spiders while the fly tried to break our bones? Well, just the fear like to guide us. So we bitched about his fans and should we crush his sweet hand? Oh. Ziggy played for time, jiving us that we were voodoo. The kids were just cracks. He was the Nas with God-given ass. He took it all too far, but boy, could he play guitar. Making love with his ego, Ziggy sucked up into his mind, like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed a man, I had to break up the band. things you set out to do. Stand, there's a cross for you to bear, things to go through if you're going anywhere. Stand for the things you know are right. It's the truth that the truth makes them so alive. Stand, all the things you want are real. You have you to complete, and there is no deal. Stand, you've been sitting much too long. There's a permanent crease in your right and wrong. Stand, there's a midget standing tall, and a giant beside him about to fall. Stand, they will try to make you crawl, and they know what you're saying makes sense at all. Stand, don't you know that you are free? Well, at least in your mind, if you want to be. Everybody I love the colorful clothes you wear, and the way the sunlight plays upon her hair. I hear the sound of a gentle wind on the wind that lifts her perfume through the air. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. Close my eyes. She's somehow closer now. Softly smile, I know she must be kind. In her eyes, she goes with me to a blossom room. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me the excitations. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me excitations, picking up good vibrations, excitations, picking up good vibrations, excitation.
Good evening. Come on, Manhattan. Brooklyn's in the house right now, so you want to be competitive, you got to be a little louder. Good evening. It is wonderful to see you all. I am Maya Wiley. I am the president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, here in my personal capacity as a New Yorker. And I want to first start by thanking the staff of Hunter. Thank you for all you do. And thank you to the president of Hunter, Dr. Nancy Cantor, as well for her leadership and for allowing us to use the space for this. And I will say my brother, Dan Wiley, is a proud Hunter alum, got his master's here. So it is indeed a jewel in the crown full of jewels of higher education in this city, which we will protect in this city. I also want to express great gratitude to all of those who provided resources out before this event: League of Women Voters, Third Act, Food and Water Watch, SAGE, New York State Alliance for Retired Americans, Medicare Rights Center, New York Jewish Agenda, Episcopal Diocese of New York, Common Cause, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York, and Everytown for Gun Safety. Thank you for being here and for sharing your resources. It's an incredibly important thing that we have not-for-profit organizations and other institutions that do the work of the people. I'm going to be very brief because you know why we're here. We're here because the state of the country, the state of our state, the state of our city, the state of all our communities, the state of all the people we care about is in danger. There is a threat, and the threat is for everything that we hold dear. And I'm very, very humbled to be here, but I'm also very angry because today is a day where my personal friend, but also our city comptroller, Brad Lander, was arrested in a courthouse. In a courthouse where someone was having their due process rights protected, and masked ICE agents came into a building that before this regime they could not enter, in order to kidnap a person out of those halls that should be hallowed. And as you saw, if you saw the video, our comptrollers asked a simple question. Do you have a warrant? Where in our nation's history would we tolerate the tyranny that would serve to arrest anyone for asking the basic question, which is a pillar of our democracy? Because if you can't question authority's ability to have authority over you, then we do not have a government, we have a regime. So I just say also, as we are on the heels of hearing Supreme Court decisions that will be handed down tomorrow, possibly including this Supreme Court's decision on birthright citizenship, something that, as we celebrate this coming weekend, Juneteenth, how many of you know you're in an academic institution? Yes. See, New Yorkers actually still learn history, unlike some places. But Juneteenth is an important marker of birthright citizenship. We will celebrate the end of a civil war and the passing of civil rights embodied in amendments to the U.S. Constitution that said if you're born here, you are homegrown. You are homegrown. And there is nothing more fundamental than that. So I just say we're on the precipice and we're pushing back, including I proudly marched in No Kings. How many of you marched in No Kings? All right, I'm not surprised. But powerful showing even in the rain. And so I will stop there just to say it matters so much that you're here. It matters so much that we have the leadership of Representative Jerry Nadler, who I know needs no introduction, and of State Senator Liz Krueger, because it is all of our electeds. It is all of our electeds who are not only there because you voted for them, but are there because there are people in office working to ensure that we are protecting rights, not violating them, that we're serving people, not harming them, and that we're staying united, not allowing a mass of division. So with that, I would first like to invite Representative Jerry Nadler to opening remarks. Jerry.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here this evening, and thank you to Hunter College for hosting us. I want to give you an update on my efforts to fight back against the Trump administration's corruption and dangerous and destructive agenda. I want to thank my friend, Senator Liz Krueger, for being with us here tonight, and for being such a tireless champion for New Yorkers in Albany. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to Maya Wiley, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, for moderating tonight. We are living through what I believe is the gravest crisis for American democracy since the Civil War. Donald Trump is actively dismantling our institutions of government, eroding checks and balances, and using the powers of his office to enrich himself. By undermining the free press, attacking our universities and law firms, discrediting the judiciary, and turning federal agencies into instruments of personal loyalty, his goal is to erode the core principles that sustain our democracy. I promise you that I am using every tool available to me to confront this threat, defend our democracy, and demand accountability at every level of government. Last month, House Republicans pushed through Trump's devastating reconciliation bill, what he called the big, beautiful bill, but what we call the big, terrible bill. A deliberate and profoundly damaging assault on the American people. They gave members just hours to read it before forcing a vote while most of the country was asleep. Let me be clear. You don't pass something you're proud of while most Americans are fast asleep. Despite their lies, Republicans know exactly how much harm this bill will cause, and they rushed it through anyway to make sure their billionaire donors get another round of tax cuts. It includes the largest Medicaid cut in American history, and would strip health care coverage from nearly 17 million people. It would cut billions from food assistance programs. In fact, the average SNAP benefit would drop to less than $5 a day. I think we can all agree that no one can feed themselves with adequate nutrition on $5 a day. Republicans are trying to sell this bill by lying to the American people, claiming they're simply extending middle-class tax cuts. Don't believe it. They could preserve those cuts without slashing health care, cutting food assistance, or driving up the deficit. They're choosing not to because that would mean asking billionaires to pay more in taxes each year. They're also lying about the Medicaid cuts, pretending they only affect undocumented immigrants. That's not true either. Undocumented individuals are already barred from receiving federal Medicaid benefits. These cuts would fall squarely on American citizens and permanent residents. They would fall on children, seniors, people with disabilities, and working families who rely on Medicaid every day. I'm fighting this bill every step of the way. In committee, I've helped lead the Democratic opposition, introducing amendment after amendment to block its most brutal provisions, and forcing Republicans to defend their attacks on working families. On the House floor, I exposed their lies and laid out the devastating consequences for New Yorkers and other Americans, because Republicans like Mike Lawler and Elise Stefanik shouldn't be allowed to pretend their cruelty comes without consequences. While Republicans were able to pass this bill in the House, we have stopped legislation like this before, and we can do it again. In 2017, Trump tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act. People showed up at town halls, flooded congressional phone lines, and told their stories. Disabled Americans staged sit-ins in the halls of Congress, and together, we stopped him. I'm working with Senate allies, legal advocates, and grassroots organizers to try to ensure that this bill never becomes law. So if federal programs like Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security have helped you or your family, I want to hear your story. Stories like that can change votes. And if you have family or friends in states represented by Republican senators, Now is the time to talk to them. Ask them to contact their senators and urge them to oppose this cruel bill. The reconciliation bill is just one part of a much broader assault. As Trump targets health care and food assistance, he's also escalating a lawless, dehumanizing campaign against immigrants, marked by mass raids, family separations, and policies that violate our Constitution's guarantees of due process and equal protection. And now, after the largest day of peaceful protests our nation has ever seen last Saturday, Trump has doubled down, ordering ICE to ramp up arrests in Democratic cities and directing federal agencies to carry out the most aggressive and cruel deportations in American history. Last week, I called out the Trump administration's dangerous steps intended to escalate tensions in Los Angeles. He floated the idea of arresting California's governor, overrode 6 decades of precedent by deploying the National Guard without the state's request, and has now mobilized a full Marine battalion, a dangerous and unprecedented escalation. The use of active duty military to confront civil protests poses a direct threat to civil liberties and the foundations of our democracy. As you know, we're seeing the Trump administration's abuses right here in New York as well. President Trump and the Department of Homeland Security are sowing chaos in our community, using intimidation tactics against citizens and non-citizens alike in a reckless, dangerous, and deeply un-American campaign of fear. In a shocking and unacceptable incident, DHS agents forcibly entered my congressional office and handcuffed a member of my staff. The decision to storm a member of Congress's office and detain a staffer shows a blatant disregard for legal boundaries and democratic norms. If this can happen in a congressional office, it can happen anywhere. I've called for Congress to investigate and hold a hearing about what happened. I've also demanded that President Trump and DHS immediately stop these dangerous tactics and end the use of expedited removal, which strips immigrants of their basic rights and due process protections guaranteed by the Constitution. The Trump administration's actions are shameful. They undermine our immigration laws and do nothing to make our country safer. And beyond the cruelty, these tactics are designed to instill fear, to push immigrants out of the legal system altogether. By disappearing people in the dead of night, arresting people before their immigration court hearings, gutting asylum, and ending TPS protections, the message from this administration is clear. They don't want people to come to America the, quote, right way. They want to make sure there's no way for immigrants to experience the American dream. As a senior member of the Judiciary's Committee on the Immigration, Subcommittee on Immigration, I blasted Republicans in hearings and on the House floor for their cruel and inhuman immigration policies. And I've consistently voted against their dangerous legislation that undermines civil rights and denies due process. I've also been working to ensure Republicans can't stick their heads in the sand and pretend they're not fully complicit in Trump's dangerous agenda. This month, I will introduce the Keep Families Together Act, which would bar DHS from separating children from their parents except in narrowly defined, court-reviewed circumstances, requires swift family reunification, and guaranteed legal counsel for every child in custody. I am also backing legislation that will bar ICE officers from wearing masks or otherwise concealing their identities during enforcement actions. Over the past few weeks, we've seen a disturbing pattern. Masked, plainclothes agents ambushing immigrants outside courtrooms and on city streets. If their operations are legitimate and above board, why is there a need for anonymity? And why don't they need warrants to come onto private property. This bill will put an end to those intimidation tactics, restore transparency, and ensure the public knows exactly who is wielding federal power in our communities. We are witnessing similar authoritarian attacks in Trump's targeting of our universities. He is working to defund institutions like Columbia and Harvard under the false pretense of addressing anti-Semitism. His goal isn't public safety, it's silencing dissent. If Trump genuinely intended to combat anti-Semitism, he wouldn't have gutted the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights or filled his administration with figures who have long histories of bigotry. His actions to defund American universities are also systemically gutting our nation's world-leading medical research infrastructure, halting life-saving breakthroughs in cancer or Alzheimer's before they reach patients, and driving a generation of brilliant young scientists, doctors, and researchers out of our country and straight into the arms of China and other global competitors. I have dedicated a large part of my career in public service to combating anti-Semitism, but I will never allow that cause to be twisted and weaponized in bad faith to suppress free speech or punish academic institutions, especially by a man like Trump, who surrounds himself with anti-Semites and openly expresses sympathy for white nationalist movements. Trump is systematically dismantling essential government institutions meant to serve and protect the public. Agencies are being shut down. Tens of thousands of civil servants have been fired, and sensitive data, including Social Security records, have been seized. These moves are designed to break the public's trust and disable the government and its services from the inside out. We saw the consequences at Newark Airport last month, which was suffering from massive delays and cancellations because of FAA understaffing, an issue that has been exacerbated by Trump and Musk's reckless assault on the FAA and its personnel. I promise you tonight that I am fighting every day to protect our federal workers and ensure that Americans continue to receive the benefits and services they've earned. This is a moment of unprecedented urgency, and I am doing everything possible to address it. In addition to legislative action, I'm collaborating closely with legal experts, civil rights organizations, advocacy groups, and Attorney General Tish James to oppose Trump in court. While Trump may be confused about his constitutional responsibilities, the courts aren't. Every day, judges across the country, appointed by presidents of all ideological backgrounds, are striking down unconstitutional actions and ordering the Trump administration to follow the law. As of last week, over 260 lawsuits have been filed, and more than 190 judicial rulings have blocked the administration's unlawful actions. I have actively supported these legal efforts by filing dozens of amicus briefs in support, including one over the weekend for a lawsuit attempting to block Trump's National Institutes of Health funding cuts. I am proud that since then a federal judge has ruled that many of the NIH grants that were blocked must be restored. In addition to supporting litigation, I've demanded answers from agency heads through formal letters, and I'm working to compel public testimony from senior DHS officials involved in recent abuses. We will not allow these actions to happen in the shadows. I'm also continuing to oppose Trump's harmful agenda publicly. I've proudly joined rallies at Stonewall, outside government offices, at the VA hospital, and across our community to send an unmistakable message. They can try to silence us, but we will always speak louder, stand stronger, and fight harder. Trump's politics of hatred, division, and corporate greed will not go unchallenged. If we thwart Trump's agenda now, we can hold our ground until we retake the House in 2 years, cutting his reign of terror in half. Control of the House gives the Judiciary Committee, in which I serve, the subpoena power and hearing authority we need to hold this administration accountable. We will use that power to uncover the truth, expose corruption, and fight for justice every step of the way. Our fight is far from finished, but together we will resist, we will fight, and we will triumph. We've beaten Trump and his allies before, and with your passion and persistence, we'll do it again. Thank you for being here, for staying engaged, and for standing up for democracy. And before I take your questions, just a quick reminder, if you're having trouble with a federal agency, whether it's Social Security, Medicare, immigration, or the IRS, my district casework team is here to help. Thank you.
I can personally attest to how hardworking Congressman Nadler is and how well he is working with the civil rights community, since I lead the nation's oldest and largest coalition of over 240 groups. But that was just my proof point that he's working really hard. But equally importantly, just want to welcome Senator Krueger up to the podium, and a reminder, she is chairing the state Senate's Finance Committee, which is critically important as we're looking at this big but ugly bill.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I also want to thank Hunter for allowing us all to be here tonight and point out why universities are so important to us all. Not just so they can be here when we might be having some kinds of major community events, but why do we think the Trump administration is going after universities so hard? Why are they trying to prevent students from going to college? Why are they closing down grants for important research? Because when people get an education, they're less likely to fall for fascism. They're less likely to go, oh, yeah, I guess that's all okay with me. They learn why this is such a dangerous time and that the policies in Washington are really, in a few months, setting up this country for destruction. And that makes me sad and scared, and particularly scared for young people. So I define myself as an older person. Raise your hand if you define yourself as an older person. Okay, so we've lived a long time. We've been in a lot of fights. We might have children and grandchildren who mean everything to us, and we understand that this is our fight, because if our country crumbles, frankly because of environmental issues, if our planet crumbles, there's no future for any of them. So we have to get back out there, and we have to fight. We have no choice. I don't know who originally coined the expression, elections have consequences, but boy, does everybody understand what that means now. It was just a few months ago where we never would have imagined we were living through these situations. And the Congressman did an extraordinary job of describing some of the things that have been happening in Washington and some of the legislation that they are now trying to move through the Senate, having already moved it through the Congress. I want to tell you, as a state senator, who I believe tries to focus on everything on behalf of 20 million New Yorkers, but particularly focuses on the financial impacts, because I am chair of the Finance Committee, which I fought to get after years, because I understand everything in government is connected to the money. Where do you get the revenue, and how do you spend it? Government sort of falls into that category. And I'm telling you, the proposals that Jerry just described to you in the big, ugly bill will devastate programs in New York State. They will devastate every one of our communities. He talked about Medicaid. The estimate is now that with that legislation, New York State would lose $13 billion in federal Medicaid funds a year. You might think, oh, I'm on Medicare, I'm on private insurance, how much do I have to care? Well, guess what? When you cut and destroy the Medicaid program, and there are 4 million New Yorkers on Medicaid, you are defunding our public health system. You are making our hospitals weaker because you're pulling money out of them. So when they don't have the money from Medicaid and you need them, trust me, they're not there the same way. And if people don't have eligibility for insurance to get preventive care to avoid getting really sick, you live in the same place as everybody who will be getting really sick. So it puts your health at risk as well. Not to mention some of the ideologues filling up the federal government who apparently don't actually believe in public health and germ theory and vaccinations. And they've been getting rid of everybody who does this work, who are the scientists, and who understand what the impacts are. And so you have to care about health care, even if you think, oh, I haven't seen them cutting Medicare or private insurance from my employment, it'll affect everyone. They're talking about cutting the SNAP program, which is the federal nutrition program that helps the 20 to 25% lowest income New Yorkers with nutritious food. They're talking about $2 billion in cuts to the SNAP program. They're talking about wiping out or trying to wipe out Section 8 housing, public housing, Section 202 vouchers. A lot of older people in my district are in my district and in their homes because we have these programs. And who's kidding who? If you lose your apartment in New York City, is there a cheaper one for you to find anywhere? No, there is not. So we are more vulnerable to the proposed cuts in the federal housing programs than most of the country because we're a city of renters and we don't have adequate housing and we don't have affordable housing. And so we have to keep up the fight and we have to challenge what they're doing. And Maya started out with stating, and thank you so much for being here, Maya, because you play such an important role in being a voice in these critical times, and I really appreciate and respect you, that Brad Lander was arrested for just going to an immigration court. Now, in case people aren't aware, this person, and I don't even know who this person is that he was with, this person wasn't dragged into court for criminal activity. This person had an appointment to try to move his immigration status through the legal processes that we have set up. He wasn't dragged in because he'd been found committing a crime. He was completing an appointment that he made with immigration, I believe, in the hopes of completing his legalization status at some point. And yet, what we've learned is happening. You go to your appointment, you try to do everything you're supposed to, give the information you're supposed to. Suddenly, the immigration judge is saying, well, never mind, we're just canceling this process. And then ICE greets you at the outside of the door to deport you, whether or not you've committed any crime beyond not having legal status. Now, I know some people think not having legal status is a crime. Not having your papers is a crime. This is New York City, so I always like to do this test. How many of us know of people in our immediate family, maybe a generation or two ago, who came to this country without papers? That's who New York is. Were they fleeing someplace dangerous and terrible, coming to America so that they could hopefully do better for themselves and their families? It's the exact same story today. In fact, one of the things we know, and it really infuriates me, is all the statements that are coming out that people who are here without legal status are taking our jobs, are using our benefits, are using up services so that American citizens can't get them. Not only is completely untrue, They're paying taxes. They aren't eligible for the benefits and won't be, but they're paying their taxes. So we're actually dependent not only on the labor of people who come here and do the jobs that, frankly, other Americans aren't choosing to do, we're then actually drawing down on their taxes to help pay our Social Security and our Medicare costs. And let's not kid each other. If nobody's there to plant or harvest our farms, do you know how much your food is going to cost? 10 times what it costs now? Can you even imagine if we had nobody to work the farm sector in our country? So these are dangerous times, and there is overheated political rhetoric and political violence. And I want to talk to you a little about that also. We need to decrease the overheated rhetoric. We need to decrease the perception of violence. And there has been some violence, pretty minimal, although for some reason the Trump administration wants to tell us that it's terrifying out there, and that's why we need to bring National Guard and Marines into cities like Los Angeles, where apparently the police can handle the situation just fine on their own, but they want to escalate. And our job is to fight back without escalating. And it also requires we make sure that there is the correct information going out through the news. I'm very proud of the fact that in this year's state budget, I was able to increase public funding for NPR radio stations by 5 times what they've gotten before. And there are 12 of those stations throughout the state of New York. And in many areas of the state, they are the only source of local news. So I knew the feds were going to go after the public radio stations, and they are, trying to zero them out. So I, despite the difficulties in the state budget, made a commitment that we were going to get them more money, and we were going to get them more money on an expedited basis, and we have, so 1 score for this year. We also recognize that what they're doing in Washington, while they're sort of creating chaos, is intentionally cutting fundamental programs and laws that in theory have to go through Congress, but never mind that. They just use executive order or declared. So you know what? They're wiping out 50 years of environmental law as we speak. Not through changes in the law that Congress has passed, simply by just going forward and saying that law doesn't exist anymore. We could have a whole other town hall on climate change. I could easily have a whole other town hall on climate change, and I work very hard on legislation. But what does it mean that you're going backwards 50 years in history? What does it mean that the federal government's decided to do away with any regulation on nuclear energy? They're the ones who have supposedly been responsible for oversight and tracking of any risks to us from very old nuclear power plants throughout this country, including 4 in upstate New York. Suddenly, they're not going to do that anymore. It becomes states' responsibility. That's a huge new responsibility for the state. But we have to do it. We can't just ignore that we have aging nuclear power plants and nobody's going to be looking and seeing what's going on. In fact, much of the job of your state government is becoming, what can we do now that the federal government is walking away from their responsibilities? We're probably never going to be able to backfill the amount of money they're cutting from us. The estimate is in that one bill, $20 billion less in federal money next year to the state of New York. We can't backfill that. And frankly, for a lot of reasons, we can't tax our way out. But we also have to be looking carefully at what kinds of laws can we pass where we do try to protect ourselves, where we do try to see what are the biggest risks we're facing, like I was talking about with environmental issues and nuclear energy, and making sure that we have the staff focused on watching what's happening and cross-checking and suing. Jerry Nadler talked about suing. I had a town hall 2 months ago with the Attorney General, I think 2 months ago now, and I thought I would introduce her when she got there, but I didn't have to because everyone in the audience basically went crazy seeing Tish James and going, more lawsuits, more lawsuits, we have to try to save ourselves. And it's a hell of a thing when you live in a country where you have to depend on lawsuits to keep your rights and protections, but that's where we are right now. We have to depend on great attorney generals and responsible judges who will stand up and say, no, that executive order is unconstitutional. And I want to give a shout out to Jerry Nadler, because he was the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Congress for many years. And he would give incredible presentations about constitutional rights. He even once told me that my idea to let New York State print its own money wasn't allowed. With all due respect, I disagree. Because if you're not going to get money from Washington, you probably need to print your own, because they're the only ones who get to print their own money. But he knows more about constitutional rights and protections than pretty much anyone in this country. I just don't think he ever imagined being alive at a time where you actually had to go literally A to Z on everything that the federal government is doing that is in violation of our Constitution. So we need young people and older people to join us in the fight constantly. We need to focus. We need to make sure that while we talk about being in the fight, we don't let political violence rise, and we learn how to challenge them when they want to escalate violence, because that's what they want. Please understand, that is intentional. So you need to expose injustice and reveal it, because truth and sunshine are huge. You need to validate that what they're doing are actually attacks on demonizing people and driving us apart and trying to make someone else the other. Jerry talked about the issues of anti-Semitism, the issues of racism, the issues of Islamophobia. They're trying to bring wedges into all of our relationships, all of our communities, all of our neighborhoods. You need to be able to articulate and reframe when they are doing things, why it's injustice, and turn that into moral outrage, and get the media to report on this. You need to mobilize support from friends and family and communities, but not walk yourself into everybody getting arrested every day, because then you can't keep the fight going, frankly. And you have to remember, sometimes the fight is so important that you have to steel yourself and say, I'm not going to be intimidated. This is my country, this is my home, these are my children and grandchildren that I'm fighting for. And you have to understand that we can get ourselves out of this, because they don't want us to believe that either. They want us to go home, watch Netflix, put our heads under the pillow. I get it, and sometimes that's okay to do, but then you have to get up and say, no, we're not going to allow this. We're seeing what's happening. We're seeing it every day in every way, and we won't stand for it, and we will push back, and we will always remember elections have consequences. So the next set of elections, which are right here in New York City very soon, will have consequences, and we need to all get involved there. And then we have the congressional elections next year, where we have opportunities to knock a lot of really bad people out of the US Congress and replace them with people who understand what this country's about and what this country stands for and what we need. So with that, thank you very much.
So now we will enter the question and answer portion of this town hall, which is great. If you have not yet, we're not doing hands. Okay, so here's now I've got to do my job. This is my black job for the night. So if you have a note card, you should have a note card if you have questions, and you can hand it to folks who are coming up and down the aisles. We also, some sent questions before the town hall, so we will start with some of the pre-submitted questions. I will tell you there's a lot of overlap in the questions, which is not surprising. So I think hopefully you may hear a lot of your questions answered. I will just do a housekeeping reminder, which I should have done at the top, but you all know this. I'm calling it, this is the Maya Wiley version of the house rules. Don't embarrass your mama. That's the Maya Wiley version. I'm not supposed to do anything. I have, but I'm not supposed to. So really, it's just we want to hear from everyone. We want to get through the questions. We want to give opportunity to get the cards to ask more. And please, I'm not seeing any signs, but if anyone brought any signs, please don't raise them inside the auditorium, only because you're going to block other people's view. And finally, I was remiss, and I will not be remiss now, just also to thank the people who are providing security tonight. Thank you for being here and for providing that security. I am sad to say it's needed, but I think we all saw after the events that we've been seeing in this country that it is. So I just want to start, and I'm going to ask both you, Congressman Nadler and Senator Krueger, to answer the same question here, which is really very straightforward, but critical and important, which is from Rose and Richard, asked, what are you doing to fight the Trump agenda?
Well, I'm fighting it in several ways. Number one, obviously voting against all of its parts in Congress, in the House, and we've had innumerable opportunities to vote against terrible legislation, which is sponsored by the Republicans at the behest of Trump. And second, I've been, as I mentioned before, amicus on any number of lawsuits against illegal things, or things we think are illegal, being done by the Trump administration. And third, we've held demonstrations. I've been at many demonstrations. We had the No Kings March the other day, where 5 million people, that was a major achievement, 5 million people. And all of this will mount up, hopefully, I believe it will mount up to a Democratic victory, at least for the House next year. And if we get a Democratic victory, I do believe for other reasons too, which we may come to later in this discussion, that we're going to get a Democratic victory for the House. And if we get a Democratic victory for the House, even just the House, not the Senate, it will enable us to cut Trump's reign of terror in half.
So, Senator Krueger, what about the other half of the reign of terror?
Thank you. So it's true that Albany has less direct impact on the Trump administration than Congress does, but we are trying to work in coordination with Congress. One of the things I'm also really proud of, besides more money for public radio, we put a whole lot more money into the Attorney General's office so she could hire more lawyers to bring more lawsuits against the federal government. Because literally every day there seems to need to be another one. And again, we passed a number of pieces of legislation that we think helps protect us here in New York from the cuts that we're seeing in policy and in staffing in Washington. Jerry mentioned it, but I just want to highlight it. Do you know, we used to have a civil service model in the federal government up until around now. And now, they're asking candidates for any kind of job in the federal government if they will take an oath of allegiance to Donald Trump. I take an oath of office to the Constitution of the state of New York and the United States of America. I don't take an oath of office to a president or an executive. That's terrifying. So we are also trying to work hard to make sure that, in fact, if there are qualified federal employees who have lost their jobs, We want them to come work for the state of New York. Let's get the best of the brightest and put them in New York State government if they're no longer allowed to work for the federal government. So we're doing a big campaign for that. So if any of you know people who have lost their jobs at the federal level and are here in New York, come on, let's talk about why they can be great state employees. Thank you.
All right. I'm also going to ask this question, both of you, because there's the federal vantage and the national vantage point of this and the state vantage point of this. But this is from Gary from the Upper East Side, which is, what would Trump have to do for your Republican colleagues to realize that Trump has finally crossed a line? Another way of putting this, is there a bottom?
I don't think there is a bottom. I don't think there is anything that Trump could do that if he did it, they wouldn't follow him. And we have seen that. We have seen Trump do things that would have been unthinkable for any former president, that prior Republicans would have opposed, that the Mitt Romneys of the world opposed, and he's probably the only one left who will oppose Trump. And we've seen them go right along with it. So I don't think there is anything that they won't follow him on. And that's another reason why we have to take him down.
Liz, what about the state view on this?
So I've been in the New York State Senate for 23 years. Was in the minority most of that time. I've now been in the majority. It's much better. And I know a lot of my Senate Republican colleagues, and I have been challenging them one by one. What the hell are you doing? You're no longer representing the best interests of your constituents. What do you mean, Liz? You didn't used to be a climate denier. Suddenly you're all climate deniers. Well, that's where our party is gone. No, you didn't read the job description. The job description is lead, whether your constituents think you're right or not. You can't destroy the planet because someone else who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about has said, we're not going to do environmental anything anymore. I went to them and I said, I actually don't believe in having a one-party country. In fact, I was drafted against my will to run for the Senate to help the Democrats take back the Senate. I had no intention of being a politician. And so I was talking to them, I said, look, you guys have completely failed. You've let the Republican Party completely collapse in this country and be taken over by goons and thugs and people who think they're kings and dictators and racists. You have to go and coup your own party and rebuild it. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? So I said, look, I'm old, but if I have to do it, damn it, I'm going to do it. I don't want to have to go try to rebuild an actual Republican Party in this country, but we don't have one now. And you know it, and I know it, and you've got to speak up, and you've got to tell your congressional reps from New York State that they are failing the entire state of New York with going along with everything that Donald Trump is doing. We have to keep reinforcing over and over and over again that it's their responsibility, that they're the Republicans in Congress from New York, and when New York goes down the tubes because of all these cuts and changes, they're the ones who are responsible, and they can do something about it, they just won't.
Let me add one thing which sums it up. Norm Ornstein, who some of you may know is a political science professor, said this country needs two political parties, a center-left party and a center-right party. It has a center-left party and a cult group.
Well, Norm is a wise person. I want to switch a little bit over to Doge. There's so many things we could call it besides Doge. And Elon Musk. I mean, his official duties are over, but that doesn't mean, yes and no. Still getting $8 million a day in our tax dollars through contracts that so that's another point. But also the harm of Doge continues. I mean, Doge still is doing harm. I'm saying this, we're from the civil rights community, we're doing a lot of work on this, but the corruption is in full display. The corruption is in full display, including with Doge, including its attack on government services and safety net, including in its attacks on our very privacy rights because they have our data. We don't, and there's no accountability over it. And the Supreme Court has said, at least for now, that it's okay. So I just want to turn this back to some questions we've got in this category. So Edie from the Upper East Side asked, what are you doing to combat the Musk crime spree and assault on our government? What pressures are you using to allow reports on Musk conflicts of interest to be made public in full? And related to that, because I'll just add this in from Gail from East Midtown. Like everyone else, I'm certain I'd like to know if and what Congress is planning to do to take down Elon Musk and put a stop to all the cuts that are being made. So because the Doge is still doing that work, is the point, and obviously people still have a lot of questions.
What is Congress planning to do to take down Doge? And the answer is nothing, because Congress is dominated in both houses by the Republican Party, and they think Doge is wonderful, and they think Trump is wonderful. Doge has done tremendous damage. I mean, when Elon Musk said he was taking USAID, the Agency for International Development, through the wood chipper, and he did. And we have food rotting on American docks, food supplied by American farmers, and millions of children dying of AIDS and of hunger in Africa. They stopped the PEPFAR, which is the treatment for AIDS that we were providing the funding for, and they stopped the shipment of food even though it was rotting on the docks. So millions and millions of children have died in Africa because of Doge and because of Trump, who is enabling Doge. So this is unforgivable, but again, we have no means of controlling Doge except the same two things that I'm probably going to say in relation to most questions. We have to win the election next year, or at least for one house, and we have to keep demonstrating, like the No King's March the other day, and maybe someone will pay attention. And if no one pays attention, at least that's a way, all these marches are a way of mobilizing for the election next year.
Thank you.
Of course, Sherry's right. We've been trying to figure out at the state level what kind of laws we can pass that will stand up, that expose the corruption going on in Washington. Let's face it, we've got a government where the two leading guys, Musk and Trump, are just grifters. This is all about how much money they can get for themselves. And they're causing chaos so that we don't notice how much money they are giving themselves in contracts in, look, the tariff examples, right? We'll skyrocket your tariffs, but if my sons come to visit and you give them a large amount of money, maybe we won't have tariffs on you. I mean, it's that blatant, it's that obvious. So we're trying to figure out whether there are transparency laws, whether there are standards we can build into our state laws that prevent some of this from happening, at least from floating down to the state level. We're trying to, and this is a real challenge for all of us. At the same time they are doing all this, we are living in a world where AI and chat boxes and all this technology that most of us over the age of 15 don't even understand. No disrespect to 25-year-olds who I think do understand it. And that we don't even understand sometimes what they're doing to us. So they are taking control of our lives without our being aware of it. And so when the Congress should be focused on very broad-based reforms in our AI laws and in transparency regulations and what they're allowed to know about us. They don't have time and they don't have the right people there. And so people who want to get in on the grift and exploit even more of us and get even more of our money are being allowed to. So it's a whole other level that I'm not sure people are thinking about. We're trying to think about that at the state level. And also then, something I'm really proud of that New York tries to do, we talk to the other states in the country that have progressive legislatures, and we compare notes. Could we all do this bill? Could we all get something close to that? Maybe we should work on this together. And so all my years in the legislature, we were never doing that, and now we are constantly talking to each other. If we can't count on the federal government, and unfortunately we can't, how far can we as individual states go if we coordinate our legislative efforts and our court cases so that it's not just one state challenging, it's the 15 biggest blue states all challenging together.
Thank you. One thing I want everyone to know is this administration's put in the big but ugly bill, we're trying, getting a moratorium, a 10-year moratorium that would block states from regulating artificial intelligence in a way that protects us.
Right.
And New York State has actually done that, has actually moved forward legislation that would create more transparency and
in the
accountability.
reconciliation bill.
That's right, in the reconciliation bill. So I say this because they're actually trying to legislate, blocking our state legislators from doing what they will not do, which is protect us from abuses by tech companies. So just a note. But I do want to shift to tariffs because you brought them up, Senator Krueger, and we do have questions about it. Well, one question from Emma from Hell's Kitchen is, how are we planning to address Trump's executive orders that are illegal, specifically declaring an emergency to use tariffs? And related to that is, you know, what, Joanna from the East Side, what's being done by Congress to stop these insane on-again, off-again tariffs, and will there be sufficient votes to overcome a Trump veto? I think we know the answer to that, but go ahead. I'll just start with you, Representative Nadler.
Well, Congress, Trump is imposing these taxes unconstitutionally. And I believe he's going to be stopped by the courts. Because tariffs are a tax. Taxes are given by the Constitution in Article 2 to Congress. Now, the President is claiming the authority to impose these tariffs under a 1976 emergency law. I don't think the court is going to let him get away with that. It'll be some time, however, before it works its way through the courts. And in the meantime, those tariffs will do a lot of damage. Those tariffs will cause a lot of inflation. They'll cause a lot of inflation. And a lot of, and inflation hurts people, especially low and middle income people. But the inflation may have one good impact because Trump ran against two things in the election. He ran against inflation, he ran against immigration. And if the inflation soars, as the tariffs I believe are going to make it soar, then I think people are going to vote against the Republicans in November of next year.
Right, and I just want to add, Phyllis asked, do you support legislation that would revoke or curtail the president's tariff authority?
No, I do not support legislation that would revoke or curtail the president's tariff authority because he doesn't have that authority to start with.
Well, learn something new every day. President using authority he doesn't have.
I just want to add, although the state has no role in this, the public opinion polling is showing that the kinds of issues that trigger more and more people, Democrats, independents, Republicans, to push back against Trump, even if they voted for him, are exactly these discussions. The fact that inflation is rising, jobs are becoming riskier, and costs are going up, and people actually do understand the correlation between their lives and these ridiculous policies like the bouncing ball of tariffs, and it's hurting them. So again, it goes back to helping to educate people, talk about this stuff, and you know what? Economists are great for some things. We have some very good economists who are very pithy in their columns, and they have been universally attacking these proposals over and over again, and we want to get everyone understanding this. We particularly want to get Republicans and independents who thought they liked this guy to understand their lives are being made worse because of these policies.
Thank you. In a few minutes, we're also going to turn to questions that we've been gathering tonight. So I'm looking at you, Rob, in case there are any else you want to hand up. I have some. But while we do, I also want to go to the big but ugly bill. And I want to go to some of the questions around that. And you all know, and we're just starting with the impact on the economy. And the literally some of the statistics we're seeing are that there's going to be something like a $13 billion impact on New York's healthcare economy based on these cuts, based on what's coming. You've already talked also some about the services that we could lose. Let's start with you, Senator Krueger, just on what you think the state can do, because we have a question very specifically about, you've already said the state can't fill all the gaps, right? But we do have a question that goes to, can New York State stop sending our tax dollars to Washington? I don't think I know. I don't think the answer is yes to that. But I want to, but how will the state Senate think about what it's making up for all the programs that are going to be impacted by this?
Okay, so unfortunately the answer is probably not, but I looked into it because I have the exact same theory. Yeah. Why do we have to send our money to them when they're not going to be sending it back to us? Right? So I learned that Maine is the only state in the country that sets up that their corporate taxes go through their state capital and then get sent on to Washington. The way the rest of the 49 states, including ours, is set up is you don't send your federal taxes to me up in Albany. You do a separate form to the IRS. So there isn't a way for us to intervene. So that was frustrating to me. Then I jumped to my earlier point. What if we just print our own money?
Yeah.
And Jerry's going to tell you why he doesn't think that's a good idea. But then
you can't do it at home either, just saying.
And then I jumped to, well, what if we just asked people to send their money to the state instead of the federal government? Now, it puts you all at risk. I got to tell you, get a lawyer. But then I went to our controller and I said, you'll just set up an escrow account and people will send their money and we'll use it. And he said, it's not legal for me to do that, Liz. And I'm so frustrated because the good guys are always thinking we have to follow the law, and the bad guys don't seem to have any problem not following any of our laws. So don't not pay your federal taxes, please, unless you really understand the ramifications of that. And unfortunately, I don't think I can start to print my own money in the basement of the Capitol unless Jerry changes his mind and tells me it's okay.
I won't ask the having our own currency question as a state, but that's a different question. Let's go to the Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security questions, because a lot of you had questions about that, from Irma, from the Upper East Side, being concerned about Social Security and Medicare benefits as a senior and how representatives can protect us from possible cuts there. Sue from the Upper East Side asking about how to oppose Republicans' budget, especially because of those cuts to Medicare, to children's health, Social Security. Many questions along these lines. So I will turn that over to you, Representative.
Well, Social Security and Medicare are two different questions. The reconciliation bill that we passed and again, let me remind you, with not a single Democratic vote, passed by one vote in the House, cut $500 billion out of Medicare. $500 billion. And the only way to stop that is to defeat that bill. Now, the U.S. Senate has not passed the same bill. They've passed a different version of it. And maybe we will be able, as the House and the Senate go to conference committee and meld the two bills into one bill, maybe we can do something about that. Since the Republicans will dominate the conference committee, the odds are not great. Social Security is a different question. Social Security is not, the bill, this legislation does not present the problem to Social Security. The calendar does. Social Security, you pay 6.2% into Social Security. Your boss, if you're employed, pays 6.2% of salary into Social Security. If you're self-employed, you pay 12.4%. If you're not employed, you don't pay anything. That goes to the Social Security Trust Fund. We are now paying out more every year than we're taking in, and we'll start having problems in about 9 years. In about 9 years, and specifically in 9 years, the trust fund will start taking in less than it's paying out, which means they'll have to start cutting benefits. Now, there is a way to avoid this. And I have sponsored a bill with many of my Democratic colleagues to raise the wage base. What, you may ask, is the wage base? Some of you apparently know what it is. The wage base is the amount of money on which you get taxed, Social Security. Currently, it's set at $178,000. So if you make $178,000 or less, you're paying Social Security taxes on everything you make. If you're Elon Musk and your income is $200 million this year, you're paying Social Security on the first $178,000 and nothing on the other $199.8 whatever million dollars. So the legislation that John Larson of Connecticut and I and a number of others have sponsored for a number of years says, just raises the wage base. So Elon Musk will have to pay on all of his income. That will make Social Security whole for the next 100,000 years.
We like that number. I'm going to do a quick congestion pricing because it's a different kind of question. It came up from a lot of people. It came up from all sides. So I'm going to just paraphrase, which is, what can you do to protect it, to why the heck do you support it?
Okay.
Well,
I don't mind starting.
That's to both of you.
Do you want to
Okay.
start, Jerry?
I'll start.
Okay.
I support congestion pricing because it does a number of things. One, we can bond out $15 billion, which will pay to complete the Second Avenue subway, which will pay to make a lot of subway stations handicapped accessible, which will pay for maintenance of old track and signals. It will also cut congestion. It's already cutting congestion, I should say. It's cutting congestion in Manhattan below 60th Street. Now, what do I mean? It's cutting the number of cars per hour per street. That means that emergency vehicles, fire engines, ambulances can travel more quickly. That means that lives will be saved by getting to the hospital more quickly, by getting to the fire more quickly. I would also point out one other thing. In every city where it's been tried, Stockholm, London, it was initially not very popular. After a few years, it becomes very popular as people realize the benefits of it. That is the history. Now, Trump, or rather Secretary Duffy, Secretary of Transportation Duffy, has said, he's going to stop us from doing this on May something. Well, it was May, now it's June something. He keeps postponing it. because after all, we don't have the authority to do this. Yes, we do. The authority to do this, which is called the Value Pricing Program, was enacted into law with the Ice-T Act in 1992. It is the same authority that gives New Jersey the power to put a toll on the turnpike. So we don't have to worry, despite Secretary Duffy's imprecations, about the legality and the enforceability of congestion pricing.
Thank you. So, I also have been a strong supporter of congestion pricing for many years, even though some in my district opposed it. We had lots of conversations about it. And the fact is, it's both exactly what Jerry described, but it's no longer hypothetical. It's working. It's bringing in the money. It's not discouraging people from coming into Manhattan to go to the theater and the restaurants and be tourists. But it is discouraging people from driving into south of 60th Street when they have alternatives. And that is making congestion better. And ironically, just a few months in, a question I get more now than the people who are still mad about it is, it's so much quieter and less crowded south of 60th Street. Can we move the zone north and cover my neighborhood also? So it's fascinating to see how quickly people's opinions are changing about this. But I'll also point out, and that's true, this congestion pricing was to bring in the money to cover $15 billion worth of bonding. We needed on the old five-year capital plan that's ended, that we still needed to complete. We just completed a new five-year capital plan in the legislature this season, and that's going to add another $68 billion of money for modernization, for improvements, for expansion of the system, because our future as a region is completely dependent on an updated 21st century transportation system. Now, we're not planning on expanding congestion pricing to pay for that, but guess what? There's other ways we're going to be paying for that, because you don't have a New York City, you don't even have a downstate metropolitan region spreading to New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New York, unless you've got a 21st century mass transit system, and we need to get there. So the legislature was very committed to doing that, and I'm really proud of the work we did to get us, at least on paper, the money to go forward for the next 5 years as well.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to the questions that you have asked tonight, and Rob is going to bring me some more. But I'm going to turn to immigration. Shock, surprise. But there are a lot of questions that have come up even today. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to start with, because one question starts with, as highlighted today by the violent arrest of Brad Lander, it seems increasingly important to communicate to all law enforcers and personnel, from local police, National Guard, Marines, that they are obligated by oath to not follow illegal orders. So the question is, what can be done about that? And what specific law or laws do ICE follow and enforce? Meaning, are there boundaries for them now? Representative Nadler.
Well, ICE is supposed to enforce the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is part of the United States Code, which is the federal law. They have done a not great job of it under President Trump. I think he has ordered them to distort it. I mean, you saw what happened with Controller Lander today, who was manhandled outside the in 26 Federal Plaza. I mentioned in my opening remarks that my own staff was manhandled by ICE in my own office a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago. And of course, we saw Senator Padilla, who had the nerve to try to ask a question of DHS Secretary Noam, and DHS is in charge of ICE, and was despite the fact that they knew he was a senator, manhandled and pushed out and shackled. So I'm not sure whose orders they're taking or why they're doing it, but they're clearly disobeying the law. And I don't know if the courts will stop them from doing this. The Immigration and Nationality Act has a lot of different provisions that are somewhat confusing. And some of them they think, authorize this kind of conduct.
I don't have answers. I just know that this is one of the most important things we can be dealing with. Because if we become a country where our military and our law enforcement, and ICE is a kind of law enforcement, don't think they are supposed to follow the rule of law and think that they instead are supposed to follow the orders of people who they know are not following the law, then we don't have a democracy anymore. That's what has happened in other countries, and we have seen the price they have paid. And so I think the conversation hopefully is not just here in a room like this, but is at the dinner table of people who work in law enforcement, who work in our military, who may even be working at ICE, and that they are saying, what was I trained to do? What is my responsibility? And these are hard issues. When you have the President of the United States telling you to violate your oath of office, telling you to violate what you know are the laws, that's about the hardest situation, I think, particularly if you've been raised and trained in a military structure to challenge that kind of authority. But that's what our country's going to need to get to.
Wait, we're not going to do that. We have questions. Let me just answer the legal question there is the NYPD is not, we have city laws that limit when and how the New York City Police Department can cooperate with ICE. There are certain categories of crimes they are allowed to cooperate with ICE if the person has violated, if there is a warrant, if there is demonstration that it fits within that category. There is some news reporting that suggests that there are violations of New York City law, and as we know, this is an administration that's actually pushing cities to violate and states to violate their own laws. In addition to the fact that we are seeing what appear to be clear violations of civil rights and constitutional rights. So like anything, the laws are both city laws may be violated, as well as state laws, as well as constitutional rights. Now this will go back to a question I think that's going to come up, but you know, maybe that is a really good question to direct both to the New York City Police Department and to the mayor of New York City, which is not me. So, I say this to say that these are wonderful questions, by the way, and I just want to throw in a few more on immigration because there are so many good ones. And now, see, you all have me losing my place. But I do want to make sure we're covering them. What did just happen to them? I just had them. Okay. I had them. Public service, sorry. No.
She has a really hard job. I've done her job.
I do. You all have good questions, and actually I was trying to separate them by category, and now I cannot find my other ICE questions. Oh, one really great one. Why are ICE agents, are they actually allowed to wear masks and not respond on warrants? Representative Nadler.
I don't think they're allowed to wear masks and not respond to warrants, but they're getting away with it.
Yep. No, I asked that one. Okay. These I asked. All right. So most of the other questions are in this very same category except the what can we do about it. So I'm going to ask the what can we do about it question because these are law violations. City law and state law probably, and federal. What can we do about the lawlessness, Representative Nadler?
About the lawlessness?
Yes.
Well, you mean the lawlessness of the Trump administration?
The lawlessness of ICE
Oh,
related to what we're
okay.
seeing and the way in which we're seeing potential violations by police.
Probably the only thing we can do about the lawlessness of ICE, if the courts don't stop it, which they may, but I can't predict that, if the courts don't stop it, the only thing we can do to stop it is by getting control of Congress. That's at least a year and a half away.
We're gonna go back to the questions. I'm sorry, that is not okay. We have ground rules, and we're not allowing people to call out questions, which is why we're trying to call and pull the questions, and they're all excellent, by the way. So I am going to go on to a category of questions that we got just tonight around Iran, actually, which is obviously very timely, which is what can we do? The airstrikes in Iran are ongoing. What is your opinion on Trump's support of the bombing? And is there, do you believe that it will have a positive or negative effect on Iran's global influence?
Well, to answer that, you have to go back a bit into history. We do not want Iran to have a nuclear armaments capability. If Iran develops a nuclear armaments capability, so will Saudi Arabia, so will Iraq. You will have all the elements for a multifaceted nuclear war in the Middle East, because they all hate each other. And none of them trust each other. And it's bad enough when the United States and the Soviet Union were on a hairpin nuclear trigger, and we almost had a nuclear war several times through false alarms. To have a multiplex would be terrible. And believe me, if Iran got a nuclear weapon, so would the others. Now, in 2015, President Obama negotiated the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon, and it was co-signed by the United States, by Russia, by China, by Germany, by England, and by France, and by Iran. And in it, Iran agreed not to develop nuclear weapons, and they had a strict inspection regime. One provision said that they were not allowed to have more than 300 kilograms of uranium enriched to 3%, and 3% you use for isotopes and medical things. They were not allowed to have more than 300 kilograms of 3%. They did. They sold it to the Russians. They sold the excess to the Russians. We were the International Atomic Agency, IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Enforcement Agency, the IAEA, had inspectors at every one of the Iranian centrifuge places, at every place they could make enriched uranium. So we had it checked. And you may recall that a lot of pressure was placed on me to vote the other way. And one of the arguments that swayed me, one of the arguments was, well, okay, we'll have inspectors at the known sites. What about they're developing some secret site that we don't know about? We won't have inspectors there. Well, the answer to that is that centrifuges require tremendous amounts of electricity. And to bring the electricity, you have to have transmission lines. And if suddenly our satellites saw transmission lines being built to someplace in the desert, you would know and you would demand the inspection there. So it seemed to me an airtight agreement, and I voted for it, as you may recall, against a lot of criticism. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who came to Congress at the invitation of the Republican Speaker John Boehner without the President's approval, which is a great breach of decorum, He spoke to Congress against the agreement. And the agreement went ahead anyway, but he persuaded Trump to pull out of the agreement, which is why we have the problem now. Now, Trump is trying to negotiate a new agreement, and maybe he will, but it is important that there not be an atomic capability in Iran, no matter what has to be done to stop it.
Thank you. You actually answered a number of the questions related to Iran. I will say that we are running out of time. I'm looking at Rob, who's nodding. I don't want us to end, and we did not get to all the questions, and there are many, many important ones, including university campuses and the right to protest, including, so I'm just saying this to say, acknowledging many other categories of questions on environment. So just acknowledging that, I know that the staff will have these questions, and I'm sure we'll find other ways to make sure constituents get responses, but this has been hugely informative. But we don't want to end without this very important question that we received, which is, what can we do? That is a question that came in a great one. I'd love you both to answer. Representative Nadler, starting with you, and then Elizabeth.
I think
that was
I have answered.
That was absolutely one of the questions.
I think
so. We will ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this is exactly, we support the right of everyone to have their viewpoints, and these are incredibly important points, and they will not get resolved here tonight. So let's go to what we can do about the issues we've been able to talk about, and we'll close there. Thank you. Okay.
The question was.
All right. So what can we do?
I think the question is, what can we do? The question is, what can we do? And I think I have answered that question several times already. There are two things that citizens can do, that people can, they don't have to be a citizen. There are two things people can do. One is to demonstrate, to organize, and the march the other day, the 5 million person march, was an example of this. To organize, like the old union saying, don't agonize, organize. Organize. And the second thing is the election next year. If we can capture control of one house, we can cut Trump's reign of terror in half, and organization is a good way to go toward that.
So thank you, and appreciate that. Appreciate all of the viewpoints, Senator Krueger.
Well, I also think, I guess protesting is of course appropriate. Shouting people down so that others can't hear doesn't actually prove to be very effective. We have many disagreements in this room alone on foreign policy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have actually asked. I'm gonna take moderator's privilege, because
Right.
this was a question from the audience about what people can do. I want to support everyone's ability to share all the things that they want to in the proper forum. But Senator, your thoughts about what people can do on the things we've been able to talk about.
So thank you. Thank you. I'm going
to ask for those not to respond and just say, let us hear the closing remarks of Senator Krueger. We are going to wrap. Please, Senator Krueger.
We all want mayhem to end, and if we don't take back our democracy, even on the issues of international policy where we don't all agree, we won't even have the ability to fight about those things. We have to save this democracy for this country while we continue to try to address international issues which are so extraordinarily complicated and painful. And it's one more place where the Trump administration is so inconsistent and has made most countries no longer trust that we can be good partners in international policy, that it's all getting worse. So we need to take on the big issues, and we have to figure it out.
Thank you, and I want to thank everyone here, and I do mean everyone, including all those who are passionate about what we're seeing here and abroad, and about what we have to do to protect the ability for people to protest, the ability for people who are protesting to be safe no matter their positions, and their ability to do that on college campuses, and also their ability to be safe from being kidnapped off the streets because they want to express their viewpoints. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to the staff of CUNY. Thank you to those who have been here to ensure that we could have this conversation. Thank you, Representative Nadler. Thank you, Senator Krueger. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for all you do.
One that's done all the things you set out to do. Stand, there's a cross for you to bear. Things to go through if you're going anywhere. Stand for the things you know are right. It's the truth that the truth makes them so alive. Stand all the things